Hey everybody, Ash here with Gents, back with another fragrance weekly rotation. I really like doing these weekly rotations. It actually kind of gives me ideas. You know, I get to cycle in some fragrances that I normally wouldn't wear because I'm making these different themes. So the theme over this past week, as you can tell by the title of the video, was Tom Ford fragrances. Now specifically, I wore Tom Ford Private Blend fragrances. I've got a decent amount of those fragrances, and truth be told, I haven't worn a lot of them. At least not for a while. So I figured going through these Tom Fords would be a good thing to do. I could bust out some old favorites and some fragrances that I just have kind of neglected. And if you'd like me to do a weekly rotation of other fragrance houses, whether we're talking designer or niche, whatever, just let me know. Stuff like Creed, Amouage, Christian Dior, Guerlain, Versace, whatever. Even something like Zara. Just let me know, I'll make it happen. Alright guys, without further ado, let's jump into this. 7 days, 7 fragrances, this time Tom Ford. I need to shine these bottles up. That way they look slightly better when I show them to you. Alright guys, first day of this rotation, January 12th. Started the week off with a bang, picked one of my favorite Tom Fords, really one of my favorite winter and fall fragrances in general. This is the first private blend that I actually bought a full bottle of. If there were a Mount Rushmore of Tom Ford fragrances specific to the Tom Ford brand, not including the ones that he made while he was over Gucci, this one would be on there for sure. It is this guy, Tobacco Vanille. Obviously this includes notes of tobacco and vanilla. It's kind of in the name, but it also has notes of fruits, spices, cacao, and tonka. This is a very sweet tobacco fragrance off my skin. So if you don't like that type of scent, you probably won't like this one. But if you do like very sweet tobacco fragrances, this one is in the upper echelon of that type of scent. It's got bits of spice, it's got the vanilla, it's got the fruits, it has a sweet pipe tobacco, and the tobacco in this smells freaking amazing. It might be a little bit too vanillic, too fruity, too sweet for some of you out there, but like I just said, as long as you like that type of scent, you like vanilla, you like sweet tobacco, you like those fruity undertones with bits of spice, you have to check this out. There are a number of fragrances out there that are alternatives to this one, but this is still the OG, and I get powerful performance from this. Powerful.
Maximum performance. No weakness performance.
You get the idea. It lasts for a really long time, it projects really far. It's just a beastly, fantastic smelling, sweet tobacco fragrance for fall and winter. One of my absolute favorite private blends. Fantastic scent. For sure a unisex fragrance, ladies can pull this off as well as men, but I have absolutely zero issue wearing this. And realistically, none of you should have an issue either. Yeah. So 112 Tobacco Vanille. Killer scent. Just so you guys are aware, there are some heavy hitters from the private blend line that are not gonna make this list/rotation. Because there are only 7 days, I can only include 7 fragrances, so some fragrances had to be left out. A couple days I wanted to go for something a little bit different. Takes me to the next day, the 13th, and on that day, I reached for Tom Ford Plum Japonais. It's another fragrance with one of the notes in the name. That actually happens a lot with Tom Ford fragrances. Actually, it happens on every single one of these fragrances. This has plum, oud, cinnamon, saffron, and amber as some of the notes. And if you want Bond No. 9 Andy Warhol Face Edition, like I do, that fragrance was on my 2019 wish list. But yeah, if you want that fragrance, but you don't want to pony up all the cash for it, this is probably the next best thing. Alexandria Fragrances, which is very similar to Duo Fragrances, has a clone of this as well, and that one is called Forbidden Plum. Plum Japonais off my skin has really good performance, but not as good as Tobacco Vanille. Plum Japonais has above average performance, it's just not on that level. It opens dark and woodsy and evolves to feature a rich plum, along with oud, spices, incense, and resins. And this one is a rich and complex fragrance that's gonna grow on you the more that you wear it. Just be aware with Plum Japonais that some people are gonna say that it's a more feminine leaning fragrance, and then other people are gonna say, oh no, it's definitely not feminine, it's a more masculine fragrance. So depending on how you pick this one up and how you perceive it, your mileage may vary. You may think, oh, completely unisex, Or you may say, oh, leans feminine, I couldn't pull this off. Or you might say, oh, it's definitely masculine. So maybe I'm just trying to tell you, if you've never smelled this one, try to sample it first. Tom Ford private blend fragrances in general are pretty easy to find at high-end retailers, if you're lucky enough to have some of those around. You know, places like Nordstrom. Personally, I find this fragrance to be just completely unisex. I don't think it leans too far feminine or masculine. As long as you wear it with confidence, you can pull it off. Realistically though, you could say that about a lot of fragrances. 113, I got my plum kick with some resins, incense, and woods. Really nice fragrance, Plum Japonais. It's gonna take me to 114. This one I have a 100 milliliter size bottle of. It's a Tom Ford that I feel like is really highly respected. A lot of people really enjoy this one. It's Ombre Absolu. Guess what the main note in this fragrance is? It's amber. I hope you guessed correctly. If you didn't, then don't know what to tell you. Along with that amber, it has vanilla, incense, and resins, some of the main notes. And it makes sense with resins because amber and resins really go hand in hand. This fragrance catches comparisons to Serge Lutens Ombre Sultan, whatever. This has a strong incense note, very prominent, and that mixes with the dark, rich amber, sweet vanilla, and thick resins. Ombre Absolu to me is just a complete gangster, cool weather, cold weather fragrance. Because it has beast mode performance, apocalyptic performance, unholy performance, whatever you want to call it. Super powerful maximum performance. And on top of all that, it's a really wonderful amber fragrance. It smells really, really nice if you dig amber. That's why I picked up the big bottle of this one. Not that the last two didn't deserve a big bottle. They all deserve a big bottle. Ombre Absolu though, just a great cold weather, wintertime fragrance. Realistically, all of these skew cool and cold weather, which makes sense because it's January. But out of all of these, that one performs the best off my skin. Next up on 115, one of my absolute favorite private blend fragrances. This one may be a little more divisive than some of the others that I'm gonna talk about and have already talked about. This one just does it for me. I love it. It's got some haters, it's got some detractors. I really don't care. It is this one, Tobacco Oud. Again, guess the notes. Tobacco Oud, whiskey, spices, some of the main notes. This one is just one of my favorites, period. I love it. My wife originally, when she first smelled this, hated it. No, I mean really, really hated it. For a while there, it was her absolute least favorite scent that I owned. And I'm just gonna blame that on her not being sophisticated enough. Realistically though, for some people, Tobacco Oud is just not gonna do it for them. Over time, it's grown on her. She doesn't hate it anymore. I wouldn't say she necessarily loves it, but you know, we're making progress. Boozy and spicy with a pipe tobacco, bits of incense and sweetness. The oud here is strongest initially, when you first spray it on. After that, it pretty much tones down and isn't really the centerpiece of the fragrance. It sort of fades to the background. It's present, it's just not overly funky, and the boozy, tobacco, sweet, spicy kind of feel takes over more than the oud does. So what I used to do back in the day, before I owned most of these, years ago, I had a contact that I actually made through eBay who would just get those little 4 milliliter Tom Ford sample bottles. Don't know if you've seen them before, but they give them out at retail counters a lot of times, especially if you make a purchase. But I would buy those from my contact. And then I would make up my own bottles, my own private blend bottles. So I had a whole bunch of 10 milliliter size decant bottles, and then I would write on each bottle what it was. And when I got low, I would buy another 4 milliliter from this person and top up my bottles. So that's how I originally had a private blend collection. It was just a whole bunch of 10 milliliter decants. It probably would have been more intelligent to just buy 10 milliliter decants as they are from like a splitter, somebody who's gonna buy a 250 milliliter flacon and then decant it out, but I didn't do that. Anyway, Tobacco Oud, when I very first smelled that, it was from those 4 milliliter samples, blew me away. And it was immediately my favorite at the time. Realistically, if I had it my way, I probably would have just worn that all 7 days. I like it that much. And like I said, I know it's divisive. I know that a lot of people hate on it, but for me, so good. So 115, Tobacco Oud. It's gonna take me to 116, January 16th. And it kind of made sense. I wore this one, Ombre Leather 16. Some of the main notes here, leather, violet leaf, and oak moss. This one also was re-released in 2018. I'm sure most of you are aware of that, but in case you're not, it was re-released in 2018. And the re-release is actually more affordable than the original release. It's no longer a private blend fragrance. And this one fairly often gets compared to Tuscan Leather, which makes sense because that's the other leather fragrance in the private blend line, and truthfully they do share a little bit of a similarity. Now, Ombre Leather 16 does not have the raspberry or the saffron notes that Tuscan Leather does. It's not as sweet as Tuscan Leather. It's a little bit smoother than Tuscan Leather. Ombre Leather 16 utilizes a prominent violet leaf note, which comes across a little bit watery and green. And Ombre Leather 16 also has a dry moss note in the base, which Tuscan Leather does not have. It's a classy, refined, sexy fragrance. It's a little bit of an easier wear than Tuscan Leather. Ombre Leather 16 you can wear in more situations. It's not as powerful as Tuscan Leather. It's not as in your face as Tuscan Leather. If I were only going to keep one, it would probably be Tuscan Leather, just because that's the original. You know, that raspberry still gets me. But this is an absolutely killer fragrance. Really, really nice. And the re-release was really well received. Lots of people like the Ombre Leather 2018 release. So on the 16th, Ombre Leather 16. We're in the final 2 days. On 117, I went with the Tom Ford fragrance that doesn't really get talked about. It is this one, Patchouli Absolu. It has patchouli, moss, leather, and cypriol as some of the notes. Now, some people hate patchouli, you know, and I get it. A lot of people kind of get reminded of hippies when they think about patchouli. Stoners, the great unwashed. And I do get that train of thought. It was kind of drilled into my mind at an early age. My mom would tell me like, oh, patchouli, you know, deadheads wear that, whatever. Personally, where I'm sitting today, patchouli's kind of comforting to me. And I have a lot of patchouli-centric fragrances. This one has an enormous, medicinal, dank, earthy patchouli right off the top. It is a powerful blast. It's very woody, dark, a little herbal, and like I said, earthy for the entire life of the fragrance. This is not a weak patchouli. This is not a subdued patchouli. It's a powerful patchouli. Now, depending on how you wear it, patchouli can be a lot of things. It can be classy, it can be sexy, or it can be dirty and it can be gross. So in my opinion, when you wear this, you should probably try to class it up at least a little bit with what you're wearing. Don't go out of the house looking dirty or grody, because then you're probably gonna turn people off a lot more than you're going to attract them. But as long as you wear it correctly, Patchouli Absolu, killer. As long as you like earthy patchoulis. If you don't go for it. All right, guys, 118, last day of the week. Went for a killer, another one that I really, really like. Tom Ford, Oud Wood. Now, this is one of the earlier bottles of Oud Wood. That's why it's got the gold sticker on the front. Nowadays, it has a gray colored sticker like my tobacco oud does. This has cardamom, vanilla, oud wood, rosewood, and sandalwood as some of the notes. And this gets compared to Versace's Oud Noir. I've made that comparison myself in the past. Versace Oud Noir is basically the designer version of this. It's got sweetness and spice to go along with a really pleasant oud. Oud Wood does not have a funky, off-putting oud. It's one that's easily accessible, easily worn. It's not gonna turn a lot of people off. If you've never smelled an oud fragrance before, you might be a little bit scared to smell one because you've heard some horror stories about how some people say it smells fecal, which, you know, means smells like crap, or a barnyard oud, animalic oud, but no, Tom Ford Oud Wood, smooth, easy to wear, and like I said, it's got that sweetness and that spice that helps round everything off and make it more palatable for your average person. It's classy and sophisticated. I also get a substantial amount of cardamom and oud wood that mixes with all those woody notes. It just smells really, really nice. Cool weather, cold weather, good to go. Sexy, fantastic, sophisticated, refined, whatever you want to call it, Tom Ford Oud Wood. That does it for my last fragrance rotation. Tom Ford's Private Blend. Lots and lots of killer fragrances in that whole lineup. All right, guys, let me know what you have been wearing over the past week. And if you do want to see me do some more brand-specific lineups, let me know. I'll be glad to do that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys again next time.